Happy Monday, Life Group leaders. It's Paul and Karen. It is week 3
Yep.
of our Good to Great discussions. This chapter was called Pursue Great People, and we're just going to spend a few minutes kind of recapping and sharing a few of our thoughts on this chapter. Before we even jump into that, I'll just say thanks to those of you who did watch last week, who responded and shared some of your favorite books and what you're currently reading with us. We
It's
appreciate
cool to hear
that a
some
lot.
of those.
Yeah. So chapter 3 started out talking about kind of before you could choose. So when we were children, we were all dealt parents, right? We didn't get to pick. We didn't get to pick our parents, and some of us were dealt an amazing hand. And we feel like, yeah, I got the royal flush. And there are some of us who
We just wanted to flush them.
who didn't get the best deal.
And that's both parents and extended family,
Teachers,
grandparents.
we didn't get to pick any of that.
That's right. They were just handed to us. And, for some of us then, because of that, Karen, I know even though we both had good parents, our parents still, they weren't perfect, just like Karen and I aren't
No one
perfect
is.
as parents. No one is. And so, you think about some of those damaged emotions that we talk about that sometimes that we receive as from some of those people that are our mentors when young. We get hurt, we get damaged different ways at different times. And some people, just little bits, but some of you are broken from some of those things from your childhood. And you might not have worked through that yet. And so one of the books that Karen and I, this goes back to last week of great books, but Karen and I sometimes will hand out this book. It's called Healing for Damaged Emotions. I have a couple on my shelf. If you're one of those individuals that hasn't worked through some of those things from your previous, the people when you couldn't choose your mentors, and if they've hurt you, if you want to work through that a little bit, come borrow one of these books from me and just begin that journey, that healing process of getting better.
Yep.
It's so
Good
huge.
book.
It is.
So then he talked a little bit about, our childhood mentors. He mentioned a couple that he had as a child, people who really
Basketball
spoke into
coaches,
his
things like
life.
that.
Right. Did you have any? that you
I had
thought
some
of?
great ones, and actually, it's my best friend's dad. When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, Bud Goddessard. He just spoke into my life. He just did. He was a great Christian man. He saw something both in John and I. John's all my best friend's a pastor as well, and so he just spoke into us, both of us, at different times in different ways, and just loved on me in the midst of my church life. And so I think of Bud and also Mr. Lewis, one of my teachers. He was a pastor part-time and a teacher part-time. And he also, when we were playing basketball out in the courts, he would speak into me. And so just a couple different individuals that spoke into me as a child.
I think in high school for me, one of my Youth for Christ leaders was just super influential in calling out my leadership ability and challenging me, but believing in me, just speaking
Huge.
so much life to me that you are going to do great things for the kingdom. And I believed him because he said that.
Yeah.
So,
And I had a few older ladies in our church too that just loved praying over me, and one, Flora Bell Richardson, and she just loved on me all the way up through college. She would send cookies to me and everything, and she was always encouraging me, and so it was such a blessing to have them.
yeah. The neat thing though is as adults, we get to choose them. And, he was talking about his spiritual Mount Rushmore and the people who really impacted him.
Yeah.
And he mentioned, the one pastor who was one of his seminary professors.
Right.
And what I really liked about that story was his persistence and the fact that mentors don't always come easy,
No.
right? There are times when we see someone and we think, I need that person in my life, and they just aren't available for whatever reason, especially someone like that seminary professor who was pouring into so many students and giving so much teaching and traveling and all of that. But I liked his persistence. He really identified with this gentleman and needed him in his life, and he didn't give up.
Right. And both Karen and I, we've chosen some good mentors. I know I've had a bunch. You haven't had quite as many as me. You've longed for some at the different churches, but I've had a bunch of different kinds. And when I was first starting into pastoring, I had like a dream team of pastors that I worked with at a church that just poured into me. at my first church. Do you remember Pauline Unger? She was such a sweet, she was like an 85-year-old woman, but she was so young at heart.
And she was housebound.
She was homebound. And the cool thing was her house was between our house and the church. And so sometimes I would leave the church early and call Pauline and say, can I just stop in? And I would stop in and Pauline would she taught me the gift of prayer at another level. I knew how to pray, but boy, this was a prayer warrior of a woman. And I would just love sitting with her and just being blessed by her. And it was a cool time.
Yeah.
And so I've had a bunch of people that have impacted me. But another one I want to throw out at you is someone that might surprise you is my son, Daniel. And I know that some of you know Daniel, my little 6-year-old. And before we got here, he was only like 3 to 4 years old. And and I had a lot of time because I wasn't pastoring that time. We were waiting. And we would just go out to playgrounds. And I would watch Daniel and I would learn because of the faith of a child that as Jesus talks about. And I would watch how Daniel lived and trusted and interacted with others. And I would just learn from him. He mentored me.
Yeah. And I think like at the end of that year, when you thought back on it, you talked about the theology of play, right? That was what you had really learned from him, was the theology of play. And I think that is incredible. And for so many of us as adults, I think we become calloused and jaded, and just the world kind of changes us, right? Yeah. And I would encourage anyone, if you don't still have kids in your house, if you do, get with your kids, play with them, because I think what Paul's saying is absolutely right. But if you don't, Darcy would love to have you as a volunteer. Even if you are in Kid Zone once a month, spending 1 hour a month, that's not a huge ask. But the faith of a child is so impactful. And I think if you talk to a lot of the volunteers in Kid Zone, they feel like they're getting as much as the kids are. They're learning so much about the Lord from being with the kids. So I think that is a great, great example.
Yeah, who would have thought? I got mentored by a 4-year-old, but it was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah.
For here now, though, also beyond the potential serving, in his book, he talks about the whole concept of a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. And the whole idea that Paul is the one who pours into you, educates you, trains you, mentors you. A Barnabas is someone, if you're in worship yesterday, Pastor Mike talked about his and my relationship, that we are like Barnabases to each other. We trust each other. We rely on each other. Friendship
goes both ways.
And then also the Timothy is when we pour into someone else in some way, shape, or form. Well, you guys, you're life group leaders. And so therefore, in the midst of that relationship, you can have several of those relationships in the midst of that life group opportunity. I know, Karen, you and I love pouring into the people in our life groups, kind of like that we are Paul and Paula's, I guess you are, that we pour into others in our life group opportunity. And we just love that opportunity. But we have some good people in our life groups that are becoming Barnabases as well, people that we trust, that we're building friendships with. And that's great. And
I think it's important for life group leaders to think about that. I think you need to kind of assess where you're at with your group. Some of you have been with the same group for quite a while. So you know that there are people in your group that you are just going to have to pour into. You are Paul, they are Timothy, and they're just not at a place where it's going to be mutual, where there's not going to be reciprocity. So you need to identify who are the Timothys in my group that I am now Paul, and I am pouring into them, and who in my group is or could be a potential Barnabas, someone who it could be a friendship going both ways, where I'm giving, they're giving, we're both receiving. I think this is a good place, especially for those of you who've been life group leaders for several seasons now and have had those same people in your groups, to figure that out. Because as we're talking about in the God Friended Me series, if we want good friends, we need to be a good friend. And so now is a great time for you to identify who are those people in your group who can be a Barnabas, and then start pouring into those relationships. And I think summertime is a perfect time for that. And I've seen some of your groups doing this, doing picnics and just get-togethers, fun things. That's a great way to build those friendships.
I think it's huge, and to find any ways that you can do that. But again, think about that. How can you continue to figure out who are those relationships, the Pauls, the Barnabas, and the Timothys? One of the things that Karen and I we're going to keep pouring into you. You're our life group leaders, and so part of our job responsibility is we feel called to continuing to pour into you. You are all of our Timothys. And so that's why we're doing these videos. We're going to pour into you. And if you ever have a situation where you need a little bit more, I mean, we can't be with all of you. There's like 40 some of you. So we can't be with all of you once a week, for
Can you imagine?
That's too much coffee. You're too high strung already.
I could try.
No,
female life group leaders, text me.
No, no, that's too much coffee for my wife. She's to be wound. Yeah. But we would love to have those opportunities. If you have a question or if you just need an extra little jolt, not coffee, but of something good that you just need pulled into, maybe talk about a book that would be good for you. Talk to us. That's why we're here. We are here for you to pour into you and to love on you in any way we can.
But above and beyond us, we encourage you because you are in this position of leadership, we encourage you to find a Paul.
Yeah.
Each of us should have someone that is pouring into us. If you're constantly just pouring out, giving, you're going to run dry, you're going to wear out, and it gets extremely lonely.
And it doesn't have to be a relationship like this. One of the things that both Karen and I and some of the staff people do as well, we use podcasts. We use, ways that people can pour into us. And it's not necessarily a relationship, but it's people that are trained and educated in Christ, and they pour into us. I'm regularly listening to podcasts from different individuals, and it's good stuff. And so I have people pouring into me through that, and I know you do the same way.
Yeah. Well, we encourage you we want to wrap up. We want to make this one a little bit shorter. We're getting close to where we want to end. But we want to encourage you to think about that. Think about who is your Paul, who are your Timothys, who are your Barnabases. Pour into those Barnabas relationships because Barnabas meant son of encouragement, and that's what friendships can really be to you. So you're in ministry as a life group leader, find those people who are going to encourage you, the person who's going to pour into you, your Paul, and then, you'll be a better Paul to your Timothys.
And like before, if you have any good stories, please let us know. Let us know some of your relationships, your Pauls, your Timothys, and let us know, because we just love your responses that some of you are sending back to us to hear how God is moving in your life. Next week is Dream Great Dreams. We look forward to talking that with you next week. We'll talk to you then.
Yep.